I know that kids can be odd sometimes. I was waiting for my bus the other day, and I had my headphones in, looking down the road in the direction where the bus would be coming from. As I turned around, there was this girl who was about 8 who was standing right next to me. So I sort of reacted surprised. She just looks at me, not smiling, and says,
"You're really pretty."
So I'm thinking, oh, that's really sweet. Kind of weird, but no harm done. That was until she goes on and says,
"I'm going to rip your face off."
I wasn't really sure how to react, so I gave her a weird look, and I'm pretty speechless. I see someone who I assume was her father, standing at the edge of the street, just watching us. The girl sees me staring at the man, so she turns around and starts absolutely screaming her head off at him. The man looks at us and then bolts away. She then turns back to me, still not smiling, not crying, not sad, and then runs after the guy. Possibly one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. Fast forward to earlier today. I'm about 2 or 3 suburbs away from the bus stop, and I'm just hanging out in front of my friend's apartment building, having a cigarette while I'm waiting for him to come down. When I see that same little girl walking towards me. She looks at me the whole way until she's in front of me, and then says,
"I know you."
And then I'm like, what? She stares at me for a few minutes, just watching everything I do, following my hands when I move them, and then looking back at my face, staring at my feet, almost as if she was sizing me up. It was completely awkward. I didn't know what to do but to just look back at her. I didn't really want to walk away because I'm not scared of a little kid, and I just can't leave because my friend is coming back down from his apartment. After a few minutes of the standoff, she gives me a weird frown and narrows her eyes, and then says,
"I'll be back for you."
She then slowly shakes her head, like in a, "Oh, I gotcha" kind of way, and then just walks away. I feel like I just encountered the Antichrist. This is a memory I've tried to block out, but the other day when my siblings and I were talking about the funny stuff my dad did when he was alive, and how sometimes he would be humorlessly absent-minded as a parent, and this long-forgotten memory came back to me, and I can't stop thinking about it. When I was about 4, I had a playground fall that resulted in a serious cut in the back of my head that needed stitches. A few weeks later, my dad took me back to the doctors to have them removed. I was very brave and sat very still for the doctor, unlike the huge fuss I had made when they put them in. So as a reward, my dad got me an ice cream and took me to the beach. It was a very small Australian town, and the beach was quite secluded. Even though it was the middle of the summer, there was only a handful of slightly older children swimming, mind you, without their parents. My dad walked me down to the water's edge and sternly warned me to stay in the shallow water and to not go any deeper than my knees. Then he disappeared. I imagine he was using the public restroom or something. I know that sounds bad, but he really wasn't a bad father. As I mentioned before, he could just be a bit irresponsible and absent-minded sometimes, but he always meant well. It drove my mom insane. There was an older boy, about 10 years old. He was paddling around a few meters away, but slowly came in closer. He then called out to me. I remembered he had blonde hair and was smiling brightly. He asked me what my name and age was. I answered, also telling him about all the important details about my trip to the doctor's that morning, emphasizing that I had been a very brave kid to impress him. My story seemed to amuse him, and he asked why I didn't come out and swim a bit deeper. I explained that I wasn't allowed to go in past my knees until my dad got back, because I couldn't swim very well, and I didn't want to get into trouble. He assured me that I couldn't possibly get into trouble if he was teaching me how to swim, and besides, my dad wouldn't see because he was gone. When I was still hesitant, he added, "Are you afraid? I thought you were brave." So I followed him out until my feet couldn't touch the bottom. He immediately grabbed me and held me under the water. I'm getting angry and upset just thinking about it. I struggled, but he was more than twice my age and my size. I realize now that he had separated from the other group of kids so they wouldn't know what he was up to. Drowning an unattended child is the perfect crime because you could easily pass it off as an accident. Probably only seconds before I lost consciousness, the boy abruptly let go and my dad lifted me out of the water. I could see the look of bewilderment mixed with fear and rage on his face. Then, for what seemed like a very long time, he patted me on my back while I screamed, sobbed, and coughed over his shoulder. By the time I had settled, and my father was satisfied that I was okay, the blonde boy and the other kids were gone, although my dad still went driving around looking for them. Had that kid stuck around, I'm quite certain my dad would have killed him. Shortly after this, we moved towns. I don't think he ever went to the police, but I can't be certain. All I know is that he never told my mom about it, because she would have lost her shit at him for leaving me by myself. I really do feel that kid seriously meant to kill me. There was something malicious about the way he tightened his hold when I struggled. I felt like he was determined and not messing around. Today I took my 5-year-old son and my 3-month-old daughter to the playground. We were there to meet a friend of mine and her daughter. It's got regular playground equipment, a huge parking lot, and a big grassy area surrounded by trees. On the other side of the trees is some sort of development they're working on. This area is pretty isolated. It's just a bunch of twisty roads and random buildings. I've never thought about or noticed this until today. We get to the park and meet up with my friend. Another mom that we knew was there with her 2 girls as well. The only other people there was a dad with his little girl and boy. I looked to be somewhere between 10 to 12. So the moms are there sitting, chatting, and playing with my adorable daughter, having a good time. The older kids were playing together, and everything was fine. Eventually, all the kids from our group kind of wander off on the playground and do their own thing. The seesaws are in a shady area. Next to them is a big stretch of grass, then the trees with a development area behind them. My son wants to go on the seesaw, but nobody wanted to join him. I get up to go, and the 10-year-old boy, who is not a part of our group, comes up to me and says, "Hi, do you want me to play with your son?" Which was a bit strange that he asked me and not my son. But I said, "Sure, bud. You go right ahead." So he goes to the other side and starts seesawing with him. His demeanor was so strange. This boy didn't smile. His voice was flat, and he didn't say a word to my son. My son was oblivious and was chatting away. After a few minutes, I start walking back to my bench, and I hear the other boy start talking with my son. Okay, so maybe he's shy around grown-ups. I sit down and start talking with my friends. The father of the boy walks near us to probably go up to his car, and I say, "Hey, it was really sweet of your son to go offer to play with mine." And I smile at him. He looks at me and goes, "That boy is not my son. I don't know who he is. He walked over and asked if I wanted him to play with my daughter. And he just kind of followed us around until you guys got here." Weird, right? He shook his head and walked away. I got this very uneasy feeling in my stomach, and I walked over to the seesaws. They were gone. I run back and hand my daughter to my friend, and then took off yelling my son's name. I see them walking towards the trees. I would guess they were a football field or so away from the area. I got this awful feeling, and I ran as fast as I could, yelling my son's name. He turned around and started trying to walk toward me. The boy grabs my son's arm and pulls him towards the trees. He then gets upset and starts yelling, "Hey, let go of me." Now, something that you should know about my son is that he has ADHD, and he does not like to be grabbed, pushed, or pulled. So when he gets frustrated, it usually comes out in very aggressive ways. In the moment I was thankful for this, he begins punching the boy and headbutting him like a crazy person. The boy lets go, and as I get to them, he disappears into the trees. My friends finally realized something was going on, so they're now standing at the edge of the play area, looking baffled. My son is crying. I'm shaking. I have no idea what the fuck just happened. I asked my son where he was going, and he said that his friend wanted to take him to go see Ryan. He was referring to the guy from Ryan Toy Reviews, his favorite YouTube channel, which he talks about nonstop. He told the boy about Ryan, and apparently the boy claimed that he knew where Ryan lived, then asked my son if he wanted to go visit him and play. So of course my son, not knowing any better, said yes. I have no idea what this kid's intentions were. I don't understand why he would lie to my son like that, and why he wanted to take him into the woods. Maybe this was completely innocent. But deep down, I know it wasn't.